But what the story then shifts to in Luke chapter 7 is our final miracle of this week, and it's this woman who comes to anoint the feet of Jesus and wash those feet with her tears. It's such a beautiful scene. We'll see something somewhat similar at the end of the Savior's life when Mary will make a similar offering to Jesus. But this unnamed woman who enters a house where she wasn't invited, but as far as Jesus is concerned, you're always invited. Just come on in. And she does. Now, whose house is it? Look at chapter 7 of Luke, verse 36 and 37, and we'll see the story unfold. One of the Pharisees desired him that he would eat with him. I honestly wonder why. I don't know. Is this to be seen of man? I mean, Jesus is really popular. Maybe I'll hitch my wagon to his star. Or is this someone like Nicodemus that I don't know, but I'd like to know more? We know that you must be a teacher come from God, because nobody can do what you've done unless God is with them. So come and eat with me. They're not at Levi's house this time. They're now at a Pharisee's house. We're going to find out later his name is Simon. Simon in Hebrew means one who hears. And so what has he heard about Jesus? Is it true reports? Are they false rumors? I don't know. Let me see if I can get the word from the Word himself. So come over and eat, will you? And Jesus comes. He's probably thinking, oh yeah, sure. I eat with publicans and sinners all the time. Glad you know that you're welcome in my presence. And though you're a Pharisee, and like your fellow Pharisees usually claiming, we're perfect at the law. We don't need anything. Our baptism is perfect and was probably even unnecessary in our level of holiness. Oh no, I hope you're humble enough to realize who I know you to be. Well, we're going to see if he is in just a moment. In verse 39, the words are taking place within Simon's heart. And when the Pharisee which had bidden him saw it, he spake within himself. That seems to keep on happening. Saying, this man, if, here's another one of our ifs for this week, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this is that toucheth him, for she is a sinner. I feel contaminated just having her under my roof. Maybe we need to break this roof down too and replace it with something cleaner. But we got to fumigate first. We got to get this woman out of here, back into the city where she belongs. But he doesn't say anything. He probably has this look of disgust and horror on his face, and that's speaking volumes too. Now, I need to say something here that I'll put it this way. It's the most glorious typo I've ever seen in Scripture. And it's no longer present. It's sad that the new edition of the Scriptures, and the online version as well, caught the mistake and corrected it. But I prefer my old one. My old Bible still preserves the old mistake, the old typo. And it's my favorite one because it's so well placed. Almost as if some enterprising typesetter, quote unquote, accidentally made the error. Because in the old version of Luke chapter 7, verse 39, the word sinner, she is a sinner, actually had 3 N's instead of the usual 2. Seriously, if you have old scriptures, go back and look. And I die laughing every time I see it because it's so perfect for what a Pharisee might have been thinking inside. Almost stuttering over the sinfulness of this woman. Like, this woman is so disgusting. I can't believe she's in my house, contaminating everything she's touching. And he's letting her touch him? Does he not know? Surely he couldn't. He can't be a prophet. Otherwise he would know that this woman is I can't even say it. She's a sinner. I mean, the worst I've ever been is a 2N sinner. This Pharisee probably thinks he's a 1N sinner. Probably doesn't have any N's to spell out the word sin. Oh no, I'm better than that. But her, a full-fledged 3N sinner. Does it get any worse than that? Can you see why I'm disappointed that we've caught the mistake and fixed it? That's not how Simon the Pharisee would feel. Well, how does Jesus respond? Look at verse 40 and watch compassion and mercy unfold. And Jesus answering, which is ironic since this Pharisee hasn't actually said anything out loud. Oh, I know you got a question on your mind, if I'm really a prophet, if you know how many ends there are in this woman's sinfulness. So let me answer your unspoken question. He said unto him, Simon, interesting, that's the first time we learn his name. Jesus knows it. He's willing to call him by name. He sees the humanity here, the identity. Don't reduce you down to some objectified thing. You're not a witch, you're a who. So Simon, I have somewhat to say unto thee. And Simon responds, Master, say on. Master, do you see me as that? Let's see. Here's my story. There was a certain creditor which had 2 debtors. The one owed 500 pence, and the other 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Now, this is going to be similar to another parable Jesus will teach later, although the numbers here are more manageable. 500 pence. A pence is what you get if you're a day laborer for a day's work. A day's wage for a day's work, well, that day's wage is a penny. So 500 pence, we're talking like 2 years' salary for an agricultural laborer. 50, well, there you got 2 months, give or take. Either way, though, they owe this creditor money. And the common denominator, they have nothing to pay. One other common denominator, the creditor forgives them both. He frankly forgives them, in fact. It's okay. I will tear up the IOU, and neither one of you owes me a thing. But then the Lord's question, tell me therefore, which of them will love him most? Now we're back to this idea of comparison. No wonder we're comparing the 500 pence debt to the 50 pence debt. So what do you think? Well, Simon answers, and answers wisely. He said, I suppose that he to whom he forgave the most. And Jesus says to him, thou hast rightly judged. Good job. But the interesting thing about this is what has not yet been figured out by Simon. And what I think the Lord really wants us to understand, not only from the story he tells, but from the story that he's living right then with this woman. You see, what you need to understand about both, yes, there's comparison. Yes, there's a difference. And there's a difference in how much love is being given and a difference in terms of how much debt is being forgiven. But what we need no comparison of is the fact that both are in debt and neither can pay and both are forgiven, which makes the difference between these 2 debtors a difference in degree, not a difference in kind. If it was a difference in kind, it would be one person owed however many pence and the other didn't owe anything, and the creditor comes in and says, hey, you don't owe me anything, and hey, you don't either, obviously. You don't owe me any more. You've never owed me to begin with. And who's going to love the creditor more? Well, duh, the one that was forgiven, because this guy doesn't even know the creditor. He's never needed the creditor's help. That would be difference in kind. Now, I think what the Lord is hinting at is, hey, Simon, you and this woman, how different are you, really? You in your Pharisaical obedience, even if it's successful. I mean, if we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt and you wanted me to come, maybe there's some belief there, wonderful. Maybe you are holier than most. But are you only different from this woman in degree? Or are you really different from her in kind? Because if you've never owed anything, if you've never had, it's like those Pharisees we saw in the JST earlier. We've never broken the law. What are you talking about? Seriously? Man, are you that blind or that hypocritical that you've worn the mask long enough that you think that's actually what you look like underneath? No, go back to the Sermon on the Mount. Reclimb the mountain. There's some more lessons to learn. But in this case, if you know that your degree of sinfulness still makes you a sinner, maybe yours is only 1 N, and maybe hers is 3, but the title sinner still applies. And guess what the sad reality of sin is? it disqualifies you automatically from being able to pay your own debt. Can't do it. Only a sinless sacrifice would suffice. So you can't pay these off. So let's say you're the 50 and she's the 500. Fine. Both of you are in need of some degree of forgiveness. And the fact that you need any forgiveness puts you in the same ship, and it's a sinking one. We're in the same boat, and there's holes all over. Her side might be going down faster than yours, but give it time, yours will sink as well. Unless I come and frankly forgive both of you, which I'm willing to do. There's actually a fascinating verse in James chapter 2. I'm excited to get to the second half of the New Testament. It's glorious. But in James chapter 2, verse 10, it's a haunting verse. He says, "For whosoever shall keep the whole law, and yet offend in one point, he's guilty of all." Now that should scare every Pharisee to death, both ancient or modern. Anyone who thinks, I'm doing well, I'm not as bad as anybody else, there's fewer ends in my sins than in theirs, doesn't matter. If you've kept the whole law, or so you think, and yet have offended in one little point, one jot, one tittle, then you're guilty of all. This is so stark, I actually had an institute student once really push back and go, that's totally unfair. I tell a little white lie and now I'm guilty of adultery? That does not seem right. I'm like, well, don't put it in those terms. It doesn't turn you into an adulterer, but it does turn you into a sinner. And then the difference between a white liar and a full-on adulterer is only a difference in degree, not a difference in kind. And because of that difference of kind, you're no longer the kind of person that can be saved by pure obedience to law. Your only hope now is the atonement of Jesus Christ. There's two paths back home. One is perfect obedience. That's the one Jesus took. He wasn't saved by his own atonement. That's circular reasoning. That's pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. You can't do that. Jesus returned to God on this rickety old bridge where every single step has to be perfect or you'll fall through. Or let's change the metaphor from bridges to a chain that hangs from above that allows you to swing across the chasm between fallen humanity and perfect divinity. Well, if it's a chain is made up of links. And I love this analogy for James' insight. Because to break the chain, did you have to break every single link? No. Some people break more links than others. They break more commandments than other people do. They have more ends in their sinfulness. But even if you only broke a single one, if you offended in one point, and that minor link is broken, what happened to your chain? It no longer works, even if every other link remains intact. So I will not be able to come back to God on the basis of perfect obedience, because I'm lumped in with the sinners. That's all we've got. It's going to take Jesus to come back, not with a blowtorch. Sometimes I worry that's what we think. Jesus, can you come back and bring the welding mask and the blowtorch? Because I only have one link, but if you can redo this one, then I'm sure I'll get across better this time. No, that ship has sailed. Actually, that ship has sunk. There's no hope. And Jesus comes back on his chain. And rather than reforging ours, he tries to forge a covenant relationship with us to say, hold on to me, and I'll bring you back to God on the basis of my perfect work and my perfect mercy.